Terry Crews is doing it. Hugh Jackman's doing it. Beyonce's doing it. So what are we doing?
What's poppin' people, it's your boy Zach Goy, back at it again with another video. Today I'm creating this video to talk about intermittent fasting. Well, there's plenty of, science, experiments, studies and whatnot on the internet already. I figured why not create a video talking about my experience as somebody who has been intermittent fasting for about 2+ years now, somewhere around there. I started intermittent fasting because I heard that it was tremendously beneficial for bodybuilding, for shredding fat, while also gaining muscle, and so I figured, hey, why not give it a try? And so since then, I have done many variations of intermittent fasting. However, probably the most important variation that to me that I'm going to talk about today is the 16-8, or 16 hours fasted, 8 hours feeding window. Well, there's plenty of fasting protocols that are like, 5 days you eat regularly, 2 days you don't eat anything, or day on, day off, something like that. I figured that the 16-8 is the easiest for me, and I'm able to keep that the most consistent throughout my training, throughout my practice. So why does intermittent fasting work? Well, if you think about it, your body is going to be in a fasted state for quite a long period of time, and then when you finally put nutrients back into your body, your cells are going to use it a lot more effectively. Your cells are constantly going through a process called autophagy. And autophagy is essentially the process of eating thyself. Autophagy literally means, the Latin words, I guess, literally mean eat thyself. And so what this means is your cells are basically excreting their unnecessary parts, so getting rid of waste, and then, eating that again and turning it back into something that's more beneficial, more useful. Your body is also going through a lot of hormonal changes when you are in a fasted state. So things like insulin, your insulin levels are going to be a lot lower. That means your blood glucose, the amount of glucose that's in your blood, the amount of sugars that are in your blood are going to be a lot lower. Your insulin is going to be a lot lower, and thus you are going to be able to burn fat a lot easier. You're going to be using those sugars more effectively. Insulin increases when we eat, and it decreases when we're in a fasted state. Lower levels of insulin equals more fat being burned in your body. Let's talk about HGH, or human growth hormone. Now, most bodybuilders are fiends for this stuff because they know that when they can get their body into HGH levels that are, 2-3 fold, they're increasing their muscle mass capacity. They're increasing their capacity to build more muscle, burn more fat. Their cardiovascular strength is increasing simultaneously. Many studies indicate that HGH skyrockets when you're in a fasted state. That means when you finally come back to eat your food or put nutrients in your body, those nutrients are going to be able to be used far more effectively by your body when you are, just coming back out of a fasted state. Studies from the National Institute of Health, Harvard Medical Review, and many other highly accredited sources confirm this information. Other benefits that you might find through consistent fasting that are also proved by these same sources: decreased risk of type 2 diabetes. The amount of glucose and insulin in your blood is lowering significantly. Your body is going to be burning up excess energy sources, and thus the amount of cholesterol in your blood is going to lower significantly. That means that your blood pressure is also being lowered. So cardiovascular health is going to increase. Better brain health. Brain inflammation is going to lower. All that excess, stuff that's clogging up your brain cells, it's going to be excreted and reused by those cells. And that process we talked about earlier, autophagy. This means things like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's, like memory loss, all of these issues are going to decrease in severity or just not even be an issue for you anymore if you participate in regular fasting. I'm going to include some links to studies in the description that you guys can check out if you're interested. But for the most part, I'm going to try to talk about my own experience because I feel like that's what's the most relevant, what's the most helpful. I always find that hearing other people's personal experience helps me a lot when finding out how I can apply concepts in my own life. So that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of sharing my own experience from the 2 years that I have been doing this fasting stuff. So like I said, I started fasting, maybe when I was a little bit older than 19 years old. I'm 22 right now. So about 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years, maybe about 2.5 years. So like I said, I started intermittent fasting simply because I'd heard that it was really powerful. And I was like, anything that I can do to get an edge in bodybuilding, in my, building my physique, increasing my physical capabilities, I'm going to do it. And so hearing about how people were, going from the typical classic bodybuilder eating, 6-7 meals a day every 2 hours or so, to then condensing all of their eating into 2 hours, not necessarily eating less, maybe eating a little bit less, but their body's able to process that nutrient, those nutrients a little bit more effectively. I was like, man, That's an edge. That's awesome. I was already kind of a lazy guy, and so you're probably thinking, what the hell? You're a lazy guy and you want to like do this really specific meal plan thing. But if you think about it, you have to eat less, you know, and the, you know, the amount of time is a lot smaller. You're not constantly having to plan out these meals, you know, pack meals in some kind of little like container or something. You know, a lot of people carry around these like 6 meal bags, and I was like sick of that. I didn't want to do that anymore. Carrying around a jug of water is already enough, and I highly recommend everybody carry a jug because staying hydrated is the best thing you can do. Yeah, so I got into intermittent fasting, and so, you know, 2.5 years later, obviously I'm still doing it, so obviously something has been working, some benefits have been noticed, so I'm going to talk about those. So for all of my you know, my health and wellness people that are on here, I'm gonna start with y'all first. So obviously, you know, muscle mass has increased. I'm a lot leaner. Overall, I think it's just because the way I look at it is you have a metabolic window, okay? And so if you are working within that metabolic window of say 8 hours, all of the other time that you're eating is unnecessary eating, right? All of that is extra energy that is not going to be able to be used effectively, and thus you're either going to shit it out or you are going to pack it on as fat. And while I've always been kind of a skinnier guy, you know, I was never the fat guy that, you know, lost weight and became skinny and jacked. I've always been the, you know, I started out as the skinny guy. I was very skinny, and I was like, enough is enough, and so I decided I was gonna put on weight. Well, you know, fat hasn't always been an issue for me. I've always been that guy that's like, I'll take whatever I can get. Even if it's a little bit of fat, I don't even care. And it's never been an issue, so I've never had to deal with those consequences. You know, that wasn't a problem. But it was more that, you know, I was having to eat so regularly, and that's what I told myself. That's what, you know, people in my life that were fitness mentors were always telling me, like, hey, you gotta eat constantly, you gotta eat all the time, or else you're never gonna be able to gain weight. And I was like, oh shit, I gotta wake up at 7, you know, have a really big breakfast and just be eating constantly. And so when I heard about the concept of intermittent fasting, and especially the concept of the metabolic window, I was blown away, and I was like, holy crap, all of these years of eating constantly, they've probably been hurting me, if you think about it, because if you start your eating window at 7 a.m. or whenever you first wake up, you know, you have a big breakfast, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do in fitness. The first meal is supposed to be really big to really pack on those calories for the day. You know, I was eating this big meal, or maybe it wasn't such a big meal, and then I was eating throughout the day. But what happens if I'm not able to get those meals in, if I'm not able to get snacks in, those calories in? My metabolism is still churning, but there's no energy going in. And so I realized that, you know, even if I was eating enough, quote unquote enough, right? I probably was still, you know, fucking myself over because I wasn't, you know, my metabolism was constantly churning, and thus I was constantly burning everything that was inside me. So even if, you know, I had been working out well, you know, sleeping enough, if I wasn't eating literally every 2 hours and a lot of food, I was probably burning off all of those calories and just throwing them away, you know, for regular bodily processes. And even if I was eating enough, I was still probably squandering it. So once I realized, like, you know, your metabolic window is only this size, and thus you should work within it to, you know, use that metabolic window as effectively as possible, and thus pack on the muscle, burn the fat and whatnot. I was like, man, that really makes a lot of sense. And so I started trying it, and lo and behold, it worked. And so it's funny because I went vegan around the same time that I, you know, started intermittent fasting. You know, I really went on this self-progress journey with all these different things, cold showers, no fap, all of these things all around the same time. And so it's hard for me to attribute it to one thing specifically. But if you think about the idea of the metabolic window, it makes so much sense. And it really was true. When I first started intermittent fasting, probably within 3 months, that's when I, you know, weighed my heaviest. And for me, that's an accomplishment. You know, I was around 191 pounds. And right now I probably weigh about 177 pounds, 180 pounds. And that's, again, that's probably because I'm not eating enough. I still am intermittent fasting, but I'm not eating enough food. You still, if you want to hit those, you know, those weight goals, those, you know, those muscle building goals, you still want to eat enough food. And vice versa is true. If you want to lose fat, you should still be eating in a caloric deficit. I really noticed the changes when I started eating within that window when it came to gaining size and gaining strength. I do want to add another little note that my strength also increased dramatically. And again, I think this was probably because I just had a lot more nutrients in my body. I was able to build more muscle simply because I was constantly putting more muscle on, then I was able to lift more, and, you know, the cycle just kind of perpetuated like that. My last point is going to be about clarity, about mind focus. Like I told you earlier on, you know, studies have shown that, you know, your brain function actually improves. Your brain health actually improves because you're getting rid of all of this gunk. You're cleaning your cells out, and thus you are able to think more clearly. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experience with that, you know, next, but first I want to talk about the aspect of hunger. I never get hungry anymore. Guys, this is revolutionary. Anybody that knows what it's like to be hangry, it sucks, okay? I am a victim of hanger. I used to get hangry all the time, and that is the worst. You know, for somebody that's already kind of prone to the classic white boy syndrome of, you know, negativity, depression, and being a douchebag all the time, hanger is not a good addition to that. And I'm not saying I was out here like killing people or whatever, but you know, it just made my days kind of worse. You know, I was just a little bit, you know, snarkier all the time and until I could have my meal, and it was like an addict, right? Food was like my drug, and it wasn't making me, yeah, maybe it did make me feel better, but that's not something I even noticed. It was more that I would just like get this sense of like relaxation, like people getting the jitters. People say, oh, when I don't have sugar, I get the jitters. Well, it's because you have too much sugar that you're getting the jitters. Alcoholics, when they don't have alcohol, they get the jitters. The solution is not to drink more alcohol. Well, they might say it is, but the solution is to kick all that. And that's what fasting is. Fasting is getting rid of all the gunk from your body so you are functioning normally how humans are meant to function. In the Paleolithic era, humans were eating like never, right? They ate, you know, once every 18 hours because that's how they found their food. And you can't store it, right? So you eat it all immediately. So when people talk about paleo, literally intermittent fasting is the most paleo diet that one can be on. Finally, I'm going to talk about mental clarity. And this is something that is going to apply to my spiritual people as well, because I know a lot of you guys are out here trying to get better at meditation, trying to get better at astral projection, trying to access lucid dreams every single night. And the way you're going to do that is by clearing your mind, people, okay? Getting your vibe to the place where you are able to access these out-of-body kind of experiences. You know, for a lot of you guys that you're probably like, what the hell is this guy been talking about? But hold your skepticism, because when you are in a clear state of mind, you are in touch with your energy, that is when you're going to be able to access these states of mind. That is when you are going to be able to notice that difference between the woken state, the sleep state, and the astral state. That is when you are going to be able to let go of all of these, you know, inconsistent feelings within your body and access that clear state of mind that you're going to be able to meditate more effectively. This is something that is so useful to you, even if you are not into accessing out-of-body experiences. If you're not into meditation, you know, you probably want to prioritize your time a little bit more effectively. You probably want to be more focused at work, be more focused on your passions. If you're working on a business or something, even in your workouts, right? Being focused, being clear, being intentional is so beneficial in life in so many areas. One of the best ways to do that is to clear all the gunk out of your body, and one of the best ways to do that is to fast, okay? So finally, how can you implement fasting into your life? And so I threw out a question on Instagram because I told people, hey, I'm making this video, and so I asked, you know, what are your questions? What kind of things you want to know about? And people are more like, how can I implement this into my schedule? Here's the thing. For me, I have been concerned about eating and eating enough for years. I mean, let's see, probably, yeah, since I started lifting weights when I was 14 years old, so about 8 years at this point. It's hard for me to say, to answer the question of how can I implement intermittent fasting into my life, because the thing is, you probably already eat 3 times a day or more. You're probably eating snacks, you're probably eating, you know, your regular meals, right? If not, what are you doing? I don't know. So overall, the issue becomes, once you get into fitness, once you get into some kind of athletic focus, you really need to be factoring in meal times. You really need to be factoring in nutrition. And so having that, people that are already conscious of that thing, they're probably looking at intermittent fasting like, holy shit, I don't have to eat as much. And that's exactly how I looked at it. And so when you're asking me things like, okay, how can I factor this into my life? How can I time it into my life? That's totally up to you. You need to pick a variant. You know, consistency is so important, guys. So if you're going to do the 5 days on, 2 days off thing, stick with that. If you're going to do the 5 days on, 2 days off thing, stick with that for a while. If you're going to do 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off, stick with that for a while. I really recommend fasting every day and doing the 16 hours fasted, 8 hours eating window, because it's the easiest, okay? It's easy and it's, in my opinion, it's the most effective. When you're doing things like not eating for a whole day and then just eating forever, that's kind of like a short-term fast that is not going to provide you with the, you know, the strong results in the long term. You don't have to fast for 48 hours at a time to get results. I really recommend being as consistent as possible, and that's why the 16-hour, 8-hour variant is the best in my opinion. I mean, it's the easiest to maintain. You're not going hours and hours and hours without food. A lot of people say, oh my gosh, how am I going to go to work or school, you know, in a fasted state? You're actually going to feel a lot clearer. You're actually going to feel a lot more energized, but if you're used to it, if that is what your biological clock is functioning on and is used to functioning on, it's not going to be a problem. I'm probably fasted in most of the activities that I go out and do. I never work out not fasted. Okay, I never go into a meeting not fasted, because most of the meetings that I have are in the morning, and I perform really effectively. Clarity wise, I wake up and feel great. I feel energized. And a lot of people say, oh, that's because you're a vegan. Okay, maybe it is, and maybe that's the reason you should go vegan too. But I really attribute it more to the fact that I'm in a fasted state. I'm just being honest. I think it's because there's not a lot of gunk in my body. My body's not focused on processing a lot of food, processing a lot of chemicals and stuff, and thus it's easier for me to function. It's easier for me to think. It's easier for me to act and to function. Find a way that works for you. Figure out how you can incorporate this into your life. Scheduling is so important for everything, and if you can figure out how to schedule in an eating time that is like 6 to 8 hours, you're gonna be a winner. And this isn't, at this point, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I don't plan my eating windows and stuff. If I go on vacation, if I travel, yeah, I'm gonna have to plan them out a little more effectively if I want to stay on that fasted calendar. For the most part, throughout my day-to-day experience, I'm not saying, okay, I only have this 8 hours. Guys, it's 8 hours. It's a lot of time. Once you get back from work, and if you're just going home, maybe you want to go to the gym, maybe you take classes, maybe you participate in some other activities, but it's 8 hours again. So just be planning ahead, know when you are going to have time to eat, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to cook in that time too. People that are focused on fitness really understand the benefits of meal prep, and so you need to have a plan of when you're going to be making food. You should have a plan of when you're going to be making food, because that applies to not just intermittent fasting, not just other areas of bodybuilding or whatever. That applies to all fitness, all wellness. If you have time to meal prep, if you focus time to meal prep, you're inevitably going to be eating better. You are going to be cooking without the intention of eating at the same time, and thus you're going to be looking at what you're eating and saying, maybe this is not as healthy as it could be. Maybe I could be eating a little bit healthier. And so it's another added benefit in health and wellness overall. So again, scheduling, really great way to stay consistent, to be healthier, and to overall plan out a little bit and get maybe a little bit of a third person look at your life, see what you're doing wrong, see what you're doing right, and make some changes. So one of the other questions, probably the last big question that I get asked all the time, which I already addressed in this video, but I'm gonna go over it one more time, is, do I work out fasted? And the answer is absolutely yes. Like I said, you're more effective, you're more clear. I'm never hungry, and so I go in the gym, I work out, and then immediately after I work out, I'm putting energy into my body. I am breaking my fast. It is my breakfast at 4 p.m. and yeah, that's what I got for you. So yes, I do it. You should do it too. It's easy. It's fun. You're gonna get jacked. You're gonna get ripped. You're gonna feel great. You're gonna astral project. You're gonna have amazing dreams. Guys, if this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. Hit that little notification bell so you know when my videos come out, because they come out pretty often now because I'm trying to go crazy with the YouTubes. If you have any other questions, please drop below in the comments. I love talking to you guys. Send me a DM on the Instagram and I will DM you back because I love you. And without further ado, fast. Bye-bye.